Was that a laser? Sweet. How's it going, everybody? Like so many of the movies I watched when I was growing up, the version of Congo that I had was recorded off of TV. It's funny when I think about it now because there's been an entire generation of kids who have grown into adults that have never had to fiddle with adjusting the tracking on a VCR. Still never seemed to help because that squiggly line just wouldn't go away. As for the plot of Congo, it was lifted from a novel by Michael Crichton of the same title. Yes, that's Michael Crichton of Jurassic Park fame. It opens in media res on an expedition trekking across the Congolese wilderness. Funded by Travi-Com, a communications company, the team is searching for a chemically flawless diamond to develop into the next wave of communications technology. How's it going, Bruce? Travi-Com is owned by Travis, played by Joe Don Baker, whose paranoia is only matched by his insatiable need to keep ahead of the game by staying on the cutting edge. As he puts it,
I need a new cash machine. This diamond, this is it.
He's obsessed with safeguarding his trade secrets and has no scruples about sending his own employees out to their deaths. It's actually his son Charles who has led the first ill-fated expedition out into the wilds of Zaire to find the diamonds. Charles, however, and his co-researcher Jeffrey stumble across more than diamonds. They've found the Lost City of Zinj. There's no time to celebrate the discovery, though, as the presence of Charles and his team has awakened the ancient guardians of the ruinous city. The expedition team is slaughtered, and Karen Ross is sent to ascertain what happened and, if possible, bring back the diamonds they were looking for. As a kid, I had to look away just before the scene where Charles picks up the eyeball, but now it doesn't faze me in the least. Nope. Not bothered by it. Not as an adult. Not in the least. Okay, moving on. Using primatologist Dr. Peter Elliott and his talking gorilla Amy as a front for their operation, Ross and the others discover that the closer they get to their objective, the darker and more dangerous the jungle becomes. And yes, you heard me say talking gorilla, but if you're any kind of Michael Crichton fan, it makes sense in a speculative science fiction kind of way. In a country besieged by militant revolutionaries and political strife, it may be that humans aren't the most dangerous animals after all. Maybe it's the rose-colored glasses of youth that keeps Congo on my top 20 movies list. Do people really have those? But even through the critical lens of stringent film analysis, I cannot seem to find the fatal flaw or series of lesser flaws that lead up to so many moviegoers turning against Congo. And I've read the book twice. The wind-up to the movie's climax lets up in all the right places, giving the audience just enough time to catch their breath before plunging us into the harried, hectic chaos that the team experiences. Ernie Hudson plays the guide, Monroe, with a roguish flair that only Hudson could muster. But I'm not here on the behalf of a movie that's decades old. I'm here at the behest of the inner drive that keeps telling me, review more movie guns. Welcome everybody to Firearms and Film, a series where we take a look at firearms throughout cinematic history. It's part commentary, part education, part movie review. From Monroe's modified Colt 1911 to Kahega's M14, here are the top 5 firearms for Congo. Monroe's 1911 is frequently seen holstered on his belt and is only drawn 2 or 3 times throughout the entire movie, used most notably during the climactic scenes in the city of Zinj. Of note is the belt he carries it on, which harkens back to the M1936 Army pistol belts of World War II. The Colt M1911A1 was the culmination of more than a decade's worth of development by John Browning to perfect a pistol that met the arduous testing and proofing procedures of the U.S. military. Evolving from a clunkier, less aesthetic form into the classic angle grip configuration most moviegoers and firearm enthusiasts alike are familiar with, the 1911 has been revamped and reproduced since its inception. but its function and operation remains basically unchanged. In fact, it was the 1911 which influenced modern auto-loading pistol design even up to the present day. From cheap pot metal facsimiles to high-priced target models, the 1911 is emulated perhaps as much as the Colt single-action Army in design and in mechanism. Chambered in .45 ACP, the 1911 features a tilting barrel, short recoil design. Along the top of the barrel of Colt 1911 you'll find what's called locking lugs, which interlock with the slide whenever it moves backwards. This allows the barrel to travel with the action of the firearm, as the firearm moves backwards from the recoil of the projectile. At a certain point, owing to the levering action of the rotating link at the bottom of the barrel itself will tilt down and unlock from the slide, allowing the slide to complete its travel rearward and eject the cartridge. While the 1911's use as a military sidearm has been rendered obsolete by other firearms such as the M9 and P320, it is still notable as being the sidearm of choice in certain special operations. In spite of the perceived obsolescence, the design itself, however, is robust and time-tested. The round it fires was specifically designed under mandates from the U.S. military by John Browning and deemed the .45 automatic Colt pistol, or .45 ACP. The cartridge, most notably the case, is distinctly different from the older .45 long Colt rimmed cartridge, as it is designed to be used in a semi-automatic pistol. At standard powder loads with a 230 grain projectile, a .45 ACP shooter can expect velocities in the neighborhood of 830 feet per second with a striking energy of 350 foot-pounds of force. Hotter loads, with heavier bullets, have been marketed, and their velocity and energy values go up accordingly. Given all of this, the M1911A1 is probably still not sufficient enough for charging killer guerrillas, as it seems that their sure weakness is lava and laser beams. Monroe's Colt M1911 is outfitted with adjustable target sights, which can be seen atop the slide, replacing the original blade-style sights with drift-adjust windage. Tensions are high as the expedition enters the ruins of the city of Zinj. It's here that Tim Curry's character Herkemer is finally vindicated, basking in an I told you so moment as he looks around at the place so many had insisted did not exist. Yes, Herkemer is a little scummy, but he's not entirely malevolent, so he's got that going for him. Arming themselves as they make their way inward, passing through the toppled architecture of eons worth of volcanic upheaval, the team discovered that it wasn't curses or spirits which kept King Solomon's diamonds from being taken, but something far older than legend can recount. But that's quite a bit of firepower they're packing, so let's dive right into it. The FNFAL continues the trend of older military surplus weaponry being carried by the expeditioners in Congo. Packed away in crates and parachuted along with the rest of them into Zaire, the porters waste no time unpacking a litany of weapons and rifles, and it is, yet again, Ernie Hudson's Monroe character who opts for the FNFAL. Chambered in 7.62 by 51mm, the FNFAL was once considered by the U.S. military as their battle rifle in the Cold War era, but was turned down in a surprising reversal in favor of the domestically developed M14. The FNFAL's history can be traced back to military trials in the British Army circa 1940s, when the battle rifle design with which we are so familiar was being considered alongside a bullpup variation that never saw implementation. The FNFAL was the ultimate culmination of Winston Churchill's desire to produce a rifle that accepted a common standard round as determined by the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or, as we know it today, NATO. The British used a variant of the FNFAL that was manufactured using imperial units. It was called the L1A1 and it was used all the way up into the 1980s. The FNFAL excelled in ease of breakdown and cleaning, reliability, and ease of ammunition acquisition. It is sought after by many gun collectors and is still the weapon of choice in many countries around the world, from Mexico to Mozambique. The FNFAL is the rifle that almost was here in the United States. Interesting to note that the FNFAL in Congo is actually the paratrooper version with a foldable stock. The last we see of the FNFAL in the movie is when Monroe watches helplessly as Kahega is set upon by the killer guerrillas, lowering the rifle with the chamber still smoldering as he succumbs to the despair of the hopelessness of their predicament. Chambered in .223, Ross's machine pistol is glimpsed only for a moment before being crated back up and isn't brought out again until the hectic gunfight to repel the guerrillas during the campsite scene. It's too bad it's so dark you can't really see much of it. I wished it had seen more screen time. There was ample opportunity to use it in the diamond mine, but for some reason it wasn't, because, well, who knows. A rarity in its own right, it's kind of a hybrid between a full-size AR-15 rifle and a pistol, and from those who've used it, it does neither really well. It lacks a front sight like an AR-15, instead having an optics mount for lasers, I guess? Without a stock, it'd be hard to mount a scope and use it. And as heavy as I'm sure it is, firing with a pistol scope must be cumbersome, but its impracticality is overshadowed by its petite frame and futuristic design. Compact enough for an ex-CIA operative turned telecommunications specialist like Ross, the machine pistol portrayed here is actually a full auto conversion, using a lower receiver from a full auto AR-15. It's cute in a baby fire-breathing dragon kind of way, but firing from the hip like that, it's a wonder Ross hits anything at all. AR-15 pistols have made a comeback in recent years, but around the time the Patriot came out in the early 90s, the US was just on the verge of the assault weapons ban. Unfortunately, the Patriot fell prey to the ban and didn't see much of a production run. As it stands, it's hard to find, but not impossible. As cool as it looks, I'd feel a lot safer with something like our next firearm. Kahega carries the M14 throughout the movie, often having it shouldered by the sling. It's this rifle that he uses alongside a MAC-10 in the diamond mines, and it's also the same rifle that he shoots with to ward off the hippos during the hippo attack. A little trivia, hippos actually are that dangerous, cute as they might be. The M14 belongs to the family of US battle rifles, the last of that lineage actually, that fires a 7.62 by 51mm round. It was the Interim rifle that fell in the odd twilight era of Cold War US and pre-Vietnam, and though it still sees some limited use in various modified forms, it was largely phased out in favor of the M16 by 1965. The M14 utilizes a box-style detachable magazine in contrast to the fixed magazine of the M1. This allows for faster reloads as opposed to the stripper clips used in rifles like the SKS and the Garand, and yes, that's how I say it. That's how we all say it in the South. Garand. Kahega did well enough with the M14 against the Zinj killer guerrillas, that is, up until they surrounded him and attacked him in a zombie-like feeding frenzy. Man, those things are ugly. As mentioned earlier, it was the M14 that the US chose over the FNFAL, so to see both the rifles used alongside one another is kinda cool. It was either this or Kahega's MAC-10, but seeing as this is the only gun used by Dr. Peter Elliott the entire movie, I opted for this slightly anachronistic pistol. I mean, out of all the technology and guns that were packed into those crates, he wound up with one of the oldest. Some of you might be saying, were they carrying Spanish muskets in there too? The answer is, no, they were not. Once vilified because of its close association with Nazi Germany, the Luger P08 has acquired a collector's following and has been said to have influenced the aesthetic design of pistols even now. This pistol is as old as the Colt 1911, and during both World Wars, troops on either side used both sidearms to great effect, even though their designs, functions, and inner mechanisms are completely different. The P08 relies on a toggle-style locking recoil mechanism to charge and chamber the weapon, as opposed to the slide action with the tilting barrel of the Colt. The barrel of the Luger is rigidly affixed to the frame of the weapon. So here, in this film, we have two historically significant sidearms that couldn't be more different from opposing sides of two of the biggest wars in the history of the planet. And they've wound up in the Congo Jungle, used to shoot killer guerrillas. At what point Dr. Peter Elliott is given the gun is not clear, because just before entering the mines, Karen Ross hands him what appears to be a Glock. It is possible that in between the time of their entrance and the final confrontation the pistol was lost and Elliott reacquired the other, but more than likely it's that the folks checking continuity overlooked the change.